All right, here's the real deal. If I don't just like hit record right now, I'm going to sit and watch more YouTube videos and try to get myself pumped up to make a recording than actually making a recording. So I should probably make a show. What do you guys think? Should we carry on? Well, I don't care what you guys think because I'm going to carry on anyways. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the Range Minded Podcast. I'm your host, Steve Zimmerman, and I'm excited to have you guys here. As we're recording, it is my birthday. Happy birthday to me, right? It is, what is today? Monday. I took the day off just because I can. Why not? Why not? Now, why would I say it's my birthday? Why do you guys even care? Well, you probably don't, but I care because I'm getting old and feeble. And no, I'm not. I'm fine. I'm still a kid at heart. Anyway, I'm going to ask you guys for a birthday present. Let's like and share and comment and do whatever. That's a free birthday present you can give me. As you know, I've said this more than once. I don't really push this out a ton. I don't say it every episode. But I have a goal to hit 1,000 subs by the end of this year. And we are, October 20th? I shouldn't even have to look at the calendar. I know what it is. It's the 20th of October. So we still got 2 months and some left for you guys to help me hit 1,000. It is still doable, but it is not doable if you don't share this out to your friends. And that would be such an awesome birthday present for you to give me. And again, it doesn't cost you anything. Zero. Zilch. Maybe a little bit of pride, and you might have to lower your standards a touch. But it's my birthday. Come on. Feel the love. Share the love. Oh, anyway, let's get to what I'm going to talk to you. As usual, I'm going to have to reference my show notes here to my right. Not that I'm ignoring you and not making eye contact and not believing what I have to share with you. In fact, I think this is actually going to be a pretty good show. And it is incredibly fitting for some of the news that we heard today, October 20th, 2025, that makes this topic even more relevant. Now, before I even jive into this episode, I understand my last episode may have hurt some feelings, maybe was a little too negative. I get it. Sometimes I get to where I feel like I have to share information with you guys that isn't always happy, positive stuff. And I still stand beside or behind the things I said in that last episode. I don't think, the majority of the politicians that we elect care about our rights. They care about their paychecks. I know there are some that actually do fight for you and me, but that's, I think, a very small number. Now, the way we can make a difference out of that, or what we should learn, or what should we change, is just know who you're voting for and make good choices and pay attention to those people at the city and local levels first. That's where you feel the difference and can make a difference. We're not gonna dwell on the past, but let's talk about the future, shall we? This is going to be an interesting topic. Can't remember why I even thought about this as a topic. I must have been listening to, do you know what? It was, if you don't follow at Joel Anu on X, he has some amazing spaces, but we started talking about collecting curios. Like, we got into this, not even related to what the actual discussion was. And poor Joe, he got stuck in this loop of people not understanding what he was trying to say. But when I started thinking about collectibles and curios, it made me think, are guns a good investment? Like, does it make sense to invest in guns? And that's what I want to talk about. The investing properties, or this is what we'll call the episode. Are firearms a good investment? ? Are they? Let's talk about it, and we'll go from there. So over the next 45 minutes or so, I'm trying to keep this at a digestible length for you guys, because I know you don't like long episodes. But in this episode, I want to talk about if guns are a good investment strategy next to like real estate or precious metals. I think it's an interesting conversation to have. Mind you, I am not an investment guru. This is absolutely not investment advice. Don't take advice from a schlub like me. Do your own homework. But I want to look at all sorts of guns, not just like modern guns, but we're going to go into like maybe full auto, the pros and cons to that, collectibles, curios, relics. I want to explore all these, just kind of water ski on the top of it. We can look at the pros and cons of each of those and see maybe how they correlate or relate to some of these other investment opportunities like real estate, gold, that kind of thing. But like I just said, stocks. I think this might be something worth considering when diversifying your portfolio. But again, I'm a moron, so you don't have to take my advice for it. But let's dig into it. Now, before we just dive headlong into why I think guns may be a good investment strategy, let's talk about the other usual suspects. I want to just look at real estate and stocks and precious metals like gold. Again, this is just going to be kind of a water ski across the top of these. But I think it's important to look at how these other things perform that most people use as an investment a portfolio, I guess, or whatever you want to call it, a hedge. I think it's interesting to look at the dynamic or the difference between firearms and these other things. So first off, stocks, right? Everybody knows what the stock market is. Yeah, a company becomes public. They sell these shares of the company, these little portions or fractions of this company's profits, and you buy these so many shares that are available or whatever you can afford, and you just kind of hope that the thing does well. And if you pay attention to the stock market, especially lately, it is up and down, and some days are awesome, some days are really bad. So there is some pretty volatile examples of stocks in the market, especially as late. I mean, we're going to talk about gold here in a minute, but gold has jumped crazy, which is actually kind of a scary thing to think about. But with the stock market, right, there's potential like huge gains, but anytime there's this potential for a massive gain, there's a lot of risk attached to it. So the S&P averages about 7 to 10% annual return. Remember those numbers, between 7 and 10% annual, which isn't bad. That's more than what a bank will give you. But there's risk attached. And with those higher returns, much, much higher risk is there. You could lose everything in the stock market. Yes, I know I actually have some friends that are pretty dang good at investing. In fact, they do that for a living and show other people how to invest, and they do pretty well. But it really is a gamble, and you really have to pay attention all day long, very hyper-focused on what stocks are performing and what stocks you should avoid. It's time-consuming. It's a gamble. And yeah, there are some returns. Like I said, 7 to 10%. Not too bad. But when we think of like COVID, that decimated the stock market. It took a massive dump on it. And so a lot of people lost lots of money. We see sometimes when a president makes a change, or maybe when the reserve makes a change in numbers, things ebb and flow, things go good, things go bad. So there is a lot of influence on how your stocks will perform, which makes it more volatile and more dangerous. But again, greater risk, greater reward normally. So I think it's interesting to look at stocks. I would like to invest in stocks. My wife is absolutely petrified of the stock market. Let's look at property. Right, real estate tends to be a pretty good investment. Look at it this way: they don't make any more land to sell. Whatever property, real estate is available is what's available. Yes, when we're talking about structures, that's a different story. But real estate, raw land, there's a fixed amount. So that really dictates the price, which is part of the problem when it comes to real estate. Now, real estate tends to do about 3 to 5% annually, which is a good steady increase. And some of that depends on region or locality or what's happening in development in that area. That can all change the value of real estate, both up and down. But the problem is with real estate, like stocks, You can buy stocks for, depending on what you're buying. If you're buying a cheaper stock, it's not going to tend to do as well, but it's a safer investment. Or you can dump in a little bit more money with some higher risk, but it's more money. So there's a little bit of pay to play there. When it comes to real estate, that tends to be a lot more expensive to get involved in the initial investment. For example, my house. I built my house almost 20 years ago now. Land was cheap. I'm on an acre. It was about $19,000 an acre, which is pretty good. It was expensive then. Now, man, I'd love to pay that now for an acre in a subdivision is where we're at. Nowadays, in my area, land's going for like 80 to 90,000 an acre, which is crazy, right? So now that pay to play is much higher just on raw land, especially if it's somewhat developed. If you get into the more rural or agricultural land, it's usually a little bit more affordable, but you don't have like the amenities that you need, like water or power or that kind of stuff, or sewer in some cases, unless you're going to have a septic tank. But we already have a big one in Washington. Why do we need more septic tanks? But anyway, real estate tends to be a bigger risk and a lot more upfront cost. Now, depending on what you're buying, if you're buying apartments or houses to rent or maybe Airbnb, yeah, there is going to be some return there, but there's still a risk on the property itself. You could have a fire, your tenant could make a mess of it, so you're going to have to spend most of the money that you're collecting off your rent. Like, there's a lot of things going on in real estate that I don't even understand because I don't own a lot of real estate. I own my house. Well, the bank owns my house, and they're letting me stay here for a small fee. I digress. So real estate, yeah, it tends to be pretty good. It's steady, like I said, 3 to 5% roughly per year, depending on where you're at. And some things could drastically change that. Again, the Federal Reserve can change what interest rates are at, and that can change a lot. When we look at 2008, I'm in construction by trade, and so 2008 was rough on all of us. That was a major slump. And so there's another problem there. It can be pretty volatile, and things can change in a heartbeat, not to mention disasters or other things that could take effect. Like it's kind of a crapshoot. And again, you're spending way more money to get into the game if you have the liquidity. Mind you, real estate is nice because you can always move it. Right? There's always a way to get things moved, but in some cases you might sell for a loss. So I mean, it's anybody's guess there too. All right, finally, when we look at these three big dogs of investment, and I know there's others, Bitcoin, I know there's a bunch of other investment opportunities out there, but these are the three I came up with. So gold is the last one that I thought about. Now, as of today, I just looked at what gold is at today as of October 20. Why am I looking at the calendar? It's my birthday. I know what day it is. While we're recording, as of right this second, per ounce, this is just amazing to me. Gold is at $43.59, not $43, $4,359 per ounce. That is staggering. That should actually kind of be a little concerning for some of you that understand what's going on when price per ounce gold goes up that high. Gold has always been a hedge. A good hedge for your investing. Always. Gold is very liquid. You can move it very easy. It is always going up, especially when the market goes down. Gold tends to go up. When the dollar's weaker, obviously, gold has more value. Which, in the opposite, is the other problem. If the dollar goes higher, then gold loses its value, right? So there's some volatility there as well. But gold is always valuable. Always. I wish I would have invested in precious metals, not just gold, but silver, copper, titanium, those other metals too. It's not too late. But it's a good, solid investment. And it's hard to say like the percentage that comes up and down each year because it's a roller coaster ride. Unlike real estate, right? Gold isn't going to necessarily generate any income. It's not going to be something that brings residual value over and over again. other than just the value of gold itself, but it's always liquid. Like you can always sell gold. Somebody's going to buy gold all the time. So it's kind of a cool investment that way. So looking at real estate, stocks, and gold, how do you think firearms fit in this strategy? What do you guys think about guns? I mean, I like guns a lot. Are they more tangible than real estate or gold? Are they volatile like stocks can be? Let's talk about it. I think this is actually pretty interesting. Now, yes, you can buy stocks in gun manufacturers, and that's not the same thing. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the physical item of a firearm itself. So let's dive into that next. Do you say things just to make people question your integrity? Or maybe you reply to some stupid post just to start some crazy storm and then sit back and watch? You're my kind of guy. In fact, right now, we both can do this whole storm creating, shit posting thing by jumping to thegundys.com and nominating the Range Minded Podcast for Breakout Creator of the Year. Why is this so important? Well, first of all, what are the Gundys? The Gundys are 2A Content Creator Awards. They do them every year. Fabulous. I love those guys there, and I love everything about it. But why not add some new blood into the mix? And by doing this, by nominating the Range Minded Podcast for Breakout Creator of the Year at thegundys.com, that does it. That helps me have a bigger voice, get that out there in front of more people, and plus we kind of disrupt the system and make people question your integrity. If any help will be accepted, I love you guys, and well, stay range minded. See ya. Let's talk about guns. Are guns a good investment strategy? First off, let's talk about the pros to guns. So they're tangible. You can have them in your hands. You can enjoy them. You can look at them. You can shoot them. They're there. You have them. So unlike stocks that you can't really hold in your hands, you have them. Now, they normally appreciate, give or take, 5 to 15% a year. Now, that is outpacing the stock market, most stocks, or if not all stocks. 5 to 15%. That's way better than you're going to get in the bank. That's more than, well, let's put it this way. Well, yeah, more than real estate, but usually outpaces inflation. So they tend to do better than gold does, and it is tangible. Like I said, you can shoot them, you can keep them in your hands, you can clean them up, or you can save them for later and then sell them for a much greater price later on. I mean, 15% annually, that's pretty significant. Another nice thing about firearms is the diversification aspect of it. I mean, think about it. As the stock market goes up and down, guns tend to stay valuable. Or, as we saw in some of the previous administrations, when a political party makes a comment or tries to attack firearms in some way, they tend to surge. Now, you would think that dumping more firearms into the pool of what to buy, that it would drop the value of those guns, but it doesn't tend to do that. It doesn't seem to do that. So they're always going up in price, always, even some of the crappy ones. Now, plus there's like an emotional attachment or emotional part of ownership of some of these guns, especially if you're buying something that is old, right? So maybe related to some historical figure or was in World War II or something like that. So there's some pretty cool provenance, we're going to talk about that more a little bit, to some of these guns, which also greatly appreciates their value. I think with all these pros mixed in there, it makes sense. It makes sense to have something like this in as an investment strategy. Now, I know that I said the guns tend to be pretty liquid, and that is true, but there's still some challenges when it's time to move a gun. So let's talk about some of the cons about having firearms as an investment strategy. So you're usually really restricted to I shouldn't say that. There are some restrictions when it comes to moving a gun as an investment strategy. First of all, there's the political issues. Like right now we see the ATF talking about the engaged in business rule, right? That definitely throws a spanner in the works, especially if the point is to invest and then sell. Hopefully that gets all figured out, because I mean, I understand why the ATF feels that way. Like, hey, if you're moving 15 guns a month, that could be an issue. And I don't necessarily disagree with that. I get that. But if I'm buying guns and then slowly moving them to, have more liquidity to buy something else, that shouldn't be in an engaged in business rule at all. So there's the regulatory side of things. Plus, the market can get stale at times. You might be limited to things like Gun Broker or Guns America to try and sell them online. Maybe gun shows, which are getting more and more ridiculous. The gun shows when I was a kid were amazing. Now they're really lackluster. And I think a lot of that has to do with the anti-guns portrayal of what a gun show is, and so less people are likely to go. There are still some amazing gun shows across the United States, but they seem to be less and less prevalent. So then that brings us down to private sales and some of the restrictions that you might have within your city or your state about selling guns privately, which again is none of their freaking business what I sell privately, but they always try to get their greedy little fingers in there somehow. There might be, let's say you live in California and you have a gun that you move there, you have a gun that's off roster, and then you want to sell it. Well, that becomes an issue if it's not okay by the state standards, like the new Glocks by chance, because California just decided they were going to ban Glocks in their state because they're morons. So there's issues there. Plus, if you're trying to move some of the more modern tactical stuff, there's that stigma as well because people are weak and stupid and they are scared of AR-15 style rifles. There is all that stuff. So yes, they are liquid, but that does come with a challenge of moving them in some cases. Also, when it comes to keeping the value of your guns, we have to talk about storage, right? You need to be maintaining these, especially if you're out there shooting them. You need to be maintaining them. And I think a lot of us gun owners need to be better at cleaning the stuff that we take to the range. I may have some rifles that need cleaned that haven't been cleaned for a little bit. I'm sure they're okay, right? I'm sure they're fine. But we also got to worry about, especially the older stuff, we got to worry about humidity and some of the other, temperatures. It also could be a thing when it comes to the wood seasonally moving, because wood moves, right? You guys should know that wood is a natural product, so it expands and contracts with both humidity and heat. All these could be a factor if you're not storing things in a climate-controlled area, which will drastically affect the value of that gun, especially if it's something really cool and older. And even though I said, too, that sometimes, like I got to think back, was it 16, 14, something like that, when we had, I remember working at a gun store in Isle Falls, we had so many AR-15s because we were for sure that there was going to be an issue. And for all accounts, it really did seem like there was going to be an AR-15 ban. And so we had a bunch ready to sell. And it didn't end up really swinging that way. So there was a lot of AR-style rifles that we had in our warehouse. Luckily, we worked with the distributors. We got that all figured out long term, but there could be, on some of the more really ultra modern stuff, there could be an issue there affecting the value. Normally it's a pretty good investment. So how do these firearms stack up to some of these other things? Now, compared to stocks, they're going to be less volatile, right? You may not see like a 20% increase like we've seen in the past with some of the tech stocks or whatever, like GameStop or some of those. Right? You're not going to see this drastic jump like we see on those as we might see with guns. But we're also not going to see somebody dumping on a stock and it dropping like 50%. Some of you guys with investing for your 401ks understand that, right? We're not going to see those drastic highs and lows like we would in the stock market. Now, real estate definitely guns have a lower entry point than real estate does. And they tend to outperform real estate long term with some caveats mixed in there, but it's really not bad. Now, gold can be another one of those things where, depending on what the government's doing, how the dollar's holding up, gold fluctuates dramatically, highs and lows. Firearms tend to stay pretty steady, right? It's a good, steady investment, and your value just grows slowly. In some cases, depending on what you buy, obviously. So entry point is great all the way around. You can buy a collectible from $500-$600, depending on the quality, up to 1,000 or way more. We'll talk about a gun that went for far more than you can imagine. So there's lots of diversity when it comes to what you can buy to collect. Not to mention magazines or other components. I mean, that might be another strategy to mix in there as well. To me, that makes sense. It makes sense that they are something that you can invest in. So, bottom line, if you're trying to make a quick buck, guns probably aren't the best investment strategy. But if you're a patient investor who happens to really like guns, like myself, it might be a good idea. Plus, that's what we tell our wives anyways, that when we buy guns, that it's for an investment. So it's kind of a win-win all the way around. Really what it boils down to is if you're a patient dude or gal that likes the history and the nostalgia of firearms or the tech or whatever, guns might be a really good option because you can enjoy your investment. You can have it in your hands. You can take the grandkids out and really enjoy the shooting sports while growing value over time. It's not a get-rich-quick thing. It's definitely something very long-term, and I mean, it might be something worth considering. Now, let's kind of turn the page a little bit, and I want to talk about kind of the different categories of guns and maybe something to consider for your investment strategy. Now, there's a few different categories of firearms worth considering. So we have full autos, so things that were regulated since 1938. Yes, there are still some available. We'll get into some of that, pros and cons of that. So full autos, collectibles, curos and relics, and modern guns, right? So there's a few different things to look at. Each one of those offer different pros and cons, if you will, and we'll talk about them. Okay, so first off, let's talk about full autos. Now, 1986, the Gun Control Act really screwed the American gun investor and gun owner as far as full autos are concerned. That made it anything pre-ban is transferable. Anything after that is non-transferable. So what that did is it really threw that sector of investments or firearms purchases for a whirl when I see that side, the full auto side of it all. So a few years ago, a few years ago, a transferable AR or M16, not AR-15, M16, so full auto Vietnam era M16, you could pick up for $8,000 to $10,000. Now you're going to be 40, 50, maybe even more, depending on the quality or the provenance, which means if there's any kind of verifiable history of that gun being in something specific or a specific owner, that could really change the value of that transferable M16. I actually know a guy, I'm not going to tell you where he lives. In fact, I don't even know if he lives in that area anymore. I remember getting a fully transferable M16. He bought it online and had it shipped, and we disposed it to him. And we got to shoot it, and that thing was so cherry. Man, the Bakelite was perfect. The gun ran flawless, and it was a lot of money. I think then this would have been 2014, 2015, and I bet he was into that M16 about $35,000. So, yeah, it can get really expensive, all because of the Gun Control Act. Not to mention 1938 with, you know what I'm trying to say. My brain is not working. The Firearms Protection Act was in 1986. The Gun Control Act was in the 30s. So, anyway, you get what I'm trying to say. So, that's that growth. We talk about 5 to 15% on normal firearms when it comes to the full autos. I mean, that is a drastic jump in value and entry costs, which is painful. Now, if we're talking M60s or Thompsons or 1919s or even Modeuses, yeah, you can get all that stuff. your entry into those is ridiculous. MP5s, I mean, we're talking 40 grand, 30 grand, depending on what the other full autos are. You could be $100,000 for a gun, just to say you have it. The entry price is tough. Plus, who you can sell it to is also a little tougher because you got all that paperwork, another background check, and all the extra crap you got to deal with. So the liquidity is a little bit is narrowed, right? Your potential customer, when it comes to selling this to somebody to, it's tougher to move those guns. Let's talk about antiques. Now, this is anything made before 1899. That would be considered an antique. There's a lot of cool guns that took place before that time. Now, normally, these guns, they really don't have serial numbers. You shouldn't need to fill out a 4473 for some of these guns just because they're so old. And some of these hold tremendous value. Tremendous value. If you've paid attention to Colt single actions in the last 10 years, you know what I'm talking about. A good actual Colt pre-turn of the century, those are getting pretty expensive and hard to find. So we're talking now they sold for I think $20 when they first came out, which was a lot of money, back turn of the century. But we're talking $20,000 depending on the gun. Baseline, like a mediocre idea of a Colt, we're talking $5,000 to $10,000. But if you get a cherry example, yeah, well over 30 grand, 40 grand, easy, 50, 60, and even more. And this is what I wanted to tell you about it. So we talked about provenance. So one of Jesse James' guns sold in auction, the Jesse James, right? Outlaw, Wild West Outlaw. One of his revolvers recently sold in auction for over, you ready for this? $200,000. Because the gun could be traced back to Jesse James. That's where provenance really matters. So if you're into antique guns and you really want to make a good portfolio, if you can find something that's got documented history and provenance, that is going to make that gun more than just a firearm, an actual piece of history, which drastically increases the value. Those are kind of unicorns. They don't come around very often, but they do exist, and it can be awesome. I've seen auctions where guns even go for more than $200K. It exists, but you also have to have a lot more money up front to pick up some of these items. The next one I want to talk about is the curio and relics. So these are 50 years or older, okay? They also have some sort of historical significance. So World War II stuff, Civil War stuff, Vietnam stuff, some kind of historical benefit. Now you can get a curio and relics license, an FFL related to curio and relics, which is kind of nice because it makes things easier to build a collection. With curio and relics, obviously appreciation is going to be a little bit different, especially when they have some historical significance. Years ago, you could pick up an M1 Grand for a couple $100. I mean, years ago, like probably before some of you guys were even around. Now, a good example of an M1, I mean, they're going for $3,000, $5,000. Like they've drastically jumped in price and value. Or I've got a Mosin that I bought 26 years ago. I think I paid $70 for it. Now you see them all over the place for $500. Like it's crazy. An SKS. I remember when SKSs were under $100. Now they're $800. Like it's crazy. It's crazy, right? Again, we're talking long term. I just mentioned that Mosin I got, right? That's 25, 26 years of it slowly gaining value. And the reason why some of these curio and relics gain value is because they tend to be stockpile or surplus, and then that surplus dries up, which drives the value. And also with those curio and relics, we got to worry about condition. So my Mosin is not a good example of a sweet Mosin. There are some beautiful examples of Mosins out there. This one isn't it. It's a shooter. And it shoots well, actually. I was really surprised the first time I shot that gun. But all this stuff plays into your investment strategy. Now, as with any investment, you have to be educated. You have to generate some smarts and some good strategies with investing in anything. Again, I am not an investment advisor. Don't take my word for it. But you really need to pay attention to how the market's going. And honestly, when we were buying used firearms at the store, when I worked at the store, we would look at how auctions are going. So I'd look at Guns America or Gun Broker, and we could see how the market's going with stuff. And you can do that too. And you can, if you really pay attention to how things are going, you can develop a pretty solid strategy on how things work out. But if we're seeing on the low end a 5 to 15% annual increase, you're probably pretty safe on what you're buying, unless it's like something that claims to be historical. You really have to do your homework on that. And a couple of seasons of Pawn Stars would give you an idea how that works out. Let's talk about modern guns. And this is a good thing, especially with what happened today with Glock. If you guys haven't heard, Glock is being sued by all sorts of whether it be California State or Chicago and some other places. Minneapolis, I wouldn't be surprised if they tried filing a lawsuit with Glock. Because of that, Glock said, okay, hold up. We're going to change our strategy as a business. So as of November 30th of this year, 2025, Gen 3s, 4s, and 5s will not be in distribution anymore. They will not be available. They're going to be discontinued. And the Gen 6 is something that I think they call a V. I know nothing about it. I have seen nothing about what that gun is. My gut tells me that they're probably going to do something like the Fire Control Group, kind of like SIG did, where they're going to change. The reason is because the Glock switch that's been so prevalent. Man, my dogs are going crazy all of a sudden. They instead of the state or the country prosecuting these kids with federal crimes with Glock switches, would you slap them on the wrist and let them go? Glock says, fine, we're going to change what our guns will be. You won't be able to attach a Glock switch to them anymore. Whatever, that's fine, I guess. So that's going to bump up Gen 3s, 4s, and 5s in value. That's a significant thing in the market of firearms as an investment. Plus, if you have a plan to buy, like I really want to buy a Glock 48, I guess I better freaking do it now, because pretty soon they won't be in distribution anymore. Thanks a lot, California. You guys suck. But I love my friends in California. Your state is awful. Gavin Newsom's a retard, so take that for what you will. But when it comes to let's talk about modern gun, right? Let's talk about the task at hand. See, we're still talking about investments. Modern guns are a pretty good investment. Now we got to worry about the how many are in the market. Like, is the market flooded on a certain item? Are there going to be certain issues with a particular firearm manufacturer? That kind of thing. We really need to pay attention about what's selling a lot and if there's some good deals to be had. Again, I think any 3, 4, and 5 Gen Glocks might be a good idea to purchase 5 or 10 of those. But we have to worry about flooding the market with other things. AR-15 style rifles, my gosh, there's 20 million. They say there's 20 million. I think there's way more than 20 million AR-15 style rifles out there. So it's a little flooded. But nonetheless, I still see those accruing value. It may not grow as fast as some other firearms out there, but it's still not a bad idea. Some of the other things like the Mark 18, the Daniel Defense Mark 18. Yeah, I know it's an SPR, but if you do the paperwork, man, those have jumped up a ton in price. There's a lot of guns that have jumped up in price. Now there are also some very expensive guns. Like think of the Lagos Alien. Or there's a new one out there that's a lot like the Alien, only not at all. Can't remember the name of that one. Cool guns, but we're talking $5,000 for an entry level alien. So that's kind of pricey. It's a cool gun. There might be some special editions, like Lipsy's does special edition guns too, where they're only available to dealers that Lipsy's deals with. Lipsy's is a distributor, by the way, but they'll do special edition guns, and they'll work with a manufacturer and have certain Cerakote jobs or specific serial numbers, or they always do something every year. So that, as a modern gun, because it's a limited focused run on something specific, those are always good investments. I remember Colt came out a few years ago with one of their, I think it was the Target Master or something like that. It had a blue front sight, blue holographic front sight with blue grips. I wish I would have bought that gun because they don't make that anymore. I think that lasted like maybe 6-8 months of run, and then it was really hard to see that blue front sight, and so they got rid of it and went to yellow or an orange, I can't remember. So there was a very limited run of that blue front sight, which I wish I would have bought. I totally wish I would have bought that gun. It's things like that generate the value with modern guns. So you just got to pay attention to what's selling, what's moving, and what new things or what limited number of things are out there. Modern guns can be a pretty solid investment. But as with any modern gun, the future of the Second Amendment is still volatile no matter what, and any of these modern guns are they tend to be the target of gun control, right? Especially like the AR-15, or as we see with Glocks, the gun controllers hate these guns, and so there's always a little bit of question or volatility when it comes to those, which may impact, like we mentioned earlier, liquidation of those items. So you just really got to pay attention to what's going on. It can be expensive, it can be dangerous, or it can be really, really lucrative. All right, let's start wrapping this thing up, because I know you guys are ready to get off the toilet or move on to the next project. So how do we consider getting into the firearms investing? Well, first of all, I mentioned it before, you really got to pay attention. You got to do your homework. See what's moving, see what's not. That means spending a little too much time on Gunbroker or maybe Guns America or some of those other gun auction websites to see what's actually moving. Because there's stuff that seems like a good idea, and then you look at past sales and they're dumpster fire. So you really have to pay attention, do your homework, and develop a good strategy. Look at the Colt Python. That's the other thing that really affects the market. So before The Walking Dead, the Colt Python, it was a badass gun to begin with. And then they went for $1,200, $1,300 for a pretty good example. But after The Walking Dead, everybody wanted a 6-inch Python. That's what she said. And so the price skyrocketed on those. Just astronomically jumped way too high. Now, I've shot a Python. They are amazing, especially 60s, 1950s, 60s versions, 70s. They are amazing feeling guns. I don't like the new ones personally, but those old ones were absolutely epic because they only had one guy working on that. It was one gunsmith. He was very good at what he did. At least that's what I was told, but I digress. So you got to pay attention to what's moving. I guess that's the easiest thing to think about. Now, when it comes to full autos, same thing. You just got to really understand the regulations and the impacts and the difficulty of buying and selling a full auto, because it's not an easy. That's most people, if they're doing buying full autos, they're not planning on selling them. They keep them in their collection, and then they might move it to a dealer or some way to transfer it to somebody else. But most dudes that have full autos, they tend to keep them for a very long time, which is still a good strategy because they always go up in price. Now, collectibles or antiques, curios, same thing. If you can find something with provenance, something with some kind of history for a good deal, that tends to be a pretty solid investment. But again, you still have to do your homework. And some of those older guns, the antiques and collectibles, they require a little bit more in-depth digging to see if they've been sold at auction before, how they moved then. Maybe there's a chain of custody or something that you can really look at to see who had what and what things sold for. Again, you're going to get 5 to maybe 15% increase. But if something happens, or if this, maybe it was connected to somebody in history and there's some new book or something that came out with them as a main character or whatever, that can change the value of those items as well. So it all boils down to homework. But you can have all the knowledge in the world, but if you don't have the assets to pick these things up, that's going to be a problem, right? So don't go into debt unless it's a smoking deal and something you know it's going to turn well. Don't use your credit cards and max them out to buy a gun that has little real value because you think it's cool. Don't do that. Yeah, that's poor investing. Ask me how I know. Let's just say Dave Ramsey would not be pleased with me. I don't know why I said that. Just do your homework, right? And make sure you have the money to get involved in some of these investments. Are they better than some of these other big boys or big dogs in the investment strategy world? Yes and no, but don't take my advice. You really have to do your own homework to find out what's best for you. If you're just going to buy to add to your collection, like modern guns, that's probably the safest bet, the safest strategy, along with, don't forget, magazines and stuff like that, because they're always in the hot seat. I mean, I've got 5 or 6 magazines is all I've got left that you guys know about. So it's worth, it might be worth buying that kind of stuff too, especially trigger springs and components and that people overlook that kind of stuff a lot. Any of the springs and detents and stuff for AR-15s, I'm telling you, those are totally worth buying. Listen to me on that. Don't listen to me on anything else. Oh, do listen to me. Whatever. I would highly suggest components to an AR-15. Detent springs, detents themselves, gas rings for the bolt face or bolt carrier group. I'm telling you, that's probably a good thing to pick up. But you do you, boo. So that's it. Real estate, stocks, gold, guns, all of these things will appreciate in value. They all will. What investment strategy is good for you? I have no idea. Do your own homework. But it's definitely worth looking into if you live in a state that you can pick up and store some of these guns in. It's totally worth it. And all that doesn't matter, or what matters most, I don't know what I'm trying to tell you here. What matters most is your knowledge, right? So invest in your knowledge. That's always important, whether it be new classes, some training, first aid, pistol, rifle, shotgun, whatever. I don't care what it is. Keep investing in that knowledge, because that is by far the best investment. Those other things are just tools, a secondary tool to help you use that knowledge in the best way. So don't forget your education. I want to hear what you guys think. Do you think I'm wrong, or do you think I'm right? Do you have some other investment strategies when it comes to firearms? Are there things that you think people should be investing in the firearms universe? I'm curious to see what you guys have to say. So please jump down there in the descriptions, share what you have to say, share your strategies if you're willing to. I'm curious on this. I think guns are a good investment. And ammo, that might be, precious metals side of things. Copper, lead, and brass are always good to have. So I'm curious. What say you guys? So that's it. That's the show. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I really appreciate having you guys here, hanging out with me. It does mean a lot. Don't forget to please help me hit that 1,000 sub version of what I'm subversion. No. Help me hit 1,000 subscribers on YouTube and Rumble and wherever else you guys are listening. I appreciate your help so much. Again, it's my birthday, so give me a present, share me a like, and share this with your friends. That'd be super rad. Until next time, my friends, stay safe, stay armed, and stay range-minded. Peace out.
third day, God created the Remington bolt-action rifle so that man could fight the dinosaurs and the homosexuals.
Amen.